So we've got the engine down to a short block now, so you can see it's pretty nasty and dirty like we said last time. Next thing we got to do is pull this harmonic balancer off of here. So we've got a puller here. This is our harmonic balancer puller. And we want to stick this is just a 3-jaw type puller. And so we want to put this guy right in here and get our bolts in here. And we're going to pull this balancer off here. We can't get this front cover or anything off until we get the balancer off. So we'll put our bolts in here. And this is a snap-on puller. It works really, really well. Does a good job of pulling this stuff apart. And you kind of want to get your bolts even in here. So we'll run this in and touch it off the crank and make sure that all these bolts are even. Once we get that even, we'll go ahead and put our socket on there. I like to use a socket, it makes it a lot easier. And an air gun. And we can usually get that off of there relatively easy, especially on Ford. Ford small block balancers are generally not on too tight, although they are a press fit. Balancer with your puller. So we're going to replace that balancer because you can see that the rubber in there is got a lot of cracking and stuff in it, so we normally don't save those. That's a part that usually gets replaced. Then we have our front cover here that we need to contend with, and we're going to go ahead and get the bolts out of that and get that off of there, and we'll take a look at the timing chain. I would imagine that the timing chain on this motor, judging from the way the rest of it looks, is probably pretty loose. We get our bolts out here. Hopefully this timing chain is savable, this timing chain cover. These covers will quite often be eaten out where the water pump bolts up to it and the water or the coolant is traveling through the front cover. A lot of times they get eaten out on the back side of here and we have to replace them. So there's a couple of bolts up top here on the 302. If you come in here, Dan, and look at these. There's 2 bolts right here up against the block that you really can't get a socket on. So we got to come in and we got to take these out with a wrench. You want to make sure you get these. Don't forget about them, because if you try to pry the cover off without taking these 2 bolts out, you will probably crack this cover and break it. I'm speaking from experience on that one. So we'll get these bolts out and pop this cover off and see how the chain looks and see how the inside of the cover looks. Some of these can be kind of stubborn, so you just got to work with them. Now that we got all the bolts out of this guy, we can just gently tap on this cover and it should come off of there. Yeah, see, it didn't take much at all. So there's our timing chain cover. It's our gasket material here. Now this timing chain cover actually looks really good. Considering the age of this engine, it looks like they did their coolant flushes on a regular basis like they were supposed to. Letting the coolant go bad is usually the problem. We do have a lot of varnish buildup here. You can see where the gear is actually kind of eating through the varnish there. There's a lot of crud built up in here, but as far as the cover itself goes, I think it's going to clean up okay. It looks like it's in fairly decent shape. So we'll set that aside, and then we will look at our chain. If you come down here and look at the timing chain, you can see this timing chain has seen better days. It's pretty loose, and we got quite a bit of wear on this gear. Looks like the gear Might have some teeth that have some wear on them. This is our fuel pump Eccentric. This is our oil shield. You always want to make sure that this is in there because this helps to keep oil from leaking out the front seal. So we'll take the shield off of there, and then we'll go ahead and pop our timing chain off. Pop this guy. Just one bolt. This is our bolt on our fuel pump Eccentric. This is actually a two-piece Eccentric, which is typical for the earlier Fords. We'll clean all that stuff up, and we'll get our chain off. These chains, the gears are not pressed on to the crank on these Ford chains, although getting them off of the cam gear, getting the gear off the cam rather, can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. You got to work this gear off of there. There we go. And we're obviously not going to be saving this chain because it's wore out, so this is going to end up in the scrap pile, but we'll hang on to it for now in case we need to match that up later. And then our crank gear just pops right off of there. Now Ford has, all of the Fords, even with a non-roller cam, have a cam plate that they put on the front of the motor. This is a cam plate, and the nice thing about getting the motor to the point that we're at now is that we can get these lifters out pretty easily now, hopefully. Now, sometimes the lifters will get mushroomed on the bottom, and they're hard to get out of there. We will have to, if you try to pull the lifters up out of the block this way and they get stuck, you don't ever want to force them out of there. It's best to leave them in and drive them out from the bottom if they're mushroomed. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and leave the lifters alone. We're going to flip the motor upside down because we want to start taking these piston and rod assemblies out. And in the next video, we're going to get the piston and rod assemblies out and start looking at that. When we flip it over, some of these lifters hopefully will fall out. We're not reusing this cam or lifters, so we don't really care if they get mixed up. They're all going in the scrap pile. So tune in next time and we'll start getting the bottom end apart, and that's it till then.